The first FIFA World Cup game at BC Place is just 4.5 months away. How time flies. And Prime Minister Mark Carney has appointed his Secretary of State for Sport as the federal government's, let's say, a sherpa for the event. Adam Van Koeverden is in Vancouver today to meet with local organizers as the planning for the World Cup continues. And he joins us in studio this morning. Good morning to you.
Thanks very much for having me this morning, Stephen.
Thanks so much for being here. This is such a big time for sports in Canada. In addition to the World Cup, of course, just unveiled the Olympic team, as you just heard. How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling great. I am very excited for 2026. I think it's going to be Canada's year of sport. There's so many things to be looking forward to and excited for, especially here in Vancouver, which I would say is one of the world's greatest sports hosting cities. And it's great to be back in Vancouver. We just ran around False Creek a little bit to wake up before the interview. We're on Ottawa time, so it wasn't that early for us.
Good,
but,
okay.
When we're looking forward, obviously we've got the Olympics and the Paralympics in the next couple of months, but we've also got the Arctic Winter Games happening in Whitehorse in March, which is very, very important. Good timing on that one. But then FIFA starts in June. But we've also got here in Vancouver, we've got the rugby happening in March.
That's right.
And then going into the 50th anniversary for the Montreal Olympic Games. Yeah. So it's a really big year for Canadian sport, or a big year for global sport, and it's happening here in Canada.
And it's such a time for women's sport as well, especially in this city with the Golden Knights and the Vancouver Rise. And, the Rise winning the championship in last year, and the Golden Knights, every time Claude or Scott says, the Vancouver teams were one up, one down last night, I know which one was up and which one was down. Because it's usually the men's hockey team is the one that's down and the women's hockey team is the one that's up. For the World Cup specifically, tell me about your job as Sherpa. Where did that come from anyway? Who's calling you a Sherpa?
Sherpa, these days people hear Sherpa and they think we're talking about the sweater from Heated Rivalry, but Sherpa is actually like a diplomatic term. And I've got my own, by the way, and Mark Carney got his yesterday from Hudson Williams, so that's pretty cool. But the term Sherpa is a diplomatic term that's used in like G7, G8, and G20 contexts and stuff. So I'm working directly with all federal departments involved in FIFA, here to meet with Vancouver and BC officials, certainly, and Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh officials as well today. And then I also work closely with my Mexican and American counterparts. I was down in Washington, D.C., as well as in Mexico City in the last couple of months. So, just coordinating, make sure that we're all on the same page, because like you said, it's a co-host.
And how are you greeted in Washington, D.C. these days?
Sport is a great convener. It's a great reason to come together to talk about something other than politics as an icebreaker. And we saw when, the numbers were being drawn in December down in Washington, D.C., we saw Presidents Sheinbaum and Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney sitting together for like 45 minutes, having a good conversation, ironing some things out, talking about their families and getting acquainted or reacquainted, as the case might be. So I think sport just does a great job with that like sort of diplomatic effort. I'm a strong believer in sports diplomacy. I've been to the Olympics a couple of times as a competitor, working for CBC, but also as a politician, and I can just see how it brings people together for a common purpose and allows us to talk about those areas of commonality and work together for our collective goals.
Yeah, there is a move, though, especially in this World Cup there's talk of a boycott, and there are people saying that they're not going to come to games in the United States. Many European people saying they're not going to come to games in the United States. Not just for protests, for some practical reasons as well. People aren't very comfortable traveling into the U.S. these days.
Well, it wouldn't be a giant sports event without the B word, so I won't go there. But I will say that Canada continues to be the greatest host nation in the world, particularly Vancouver, okay? Like I was here for the Vancouver 2010 Olympics, and every time I come to Vancouver, I remember what an incredible event it was and what incredible legacies it has left. But Canada continues to be the best host nation in the world, and 2026 being the year of sport. We've got this incredible opportunity. Whether you're a huge sports fan or not, it's going to do so much for our economy. It's going to do so much for culture. We've got these exhibitions, these fan fests. There's a caravan. There's really something for everyone. And that's just with FIFA. And then if we look forward in the calendar a little bit through what Montreal is doing in the calendar of throughout the summer to celebrate the 50-year anniversary of the 1976 Olympics, Canada's Year of Sport 2026. It's going to be great for everyone.
But will it not be a little bit like the Olympics? I mean, sure, the town was a little more animated then. There was stuff going on outside, fan areas, that sort of thing. But, to get to see an actual World Cup soccer game is going to, it's a privilege reserved for not very many people.
Well, I was happy to see that FIFA lowered the prices, and they're adjusting those prices accordingly so that more and more people, but obviously it's 7 games, right? It's not like an Olympics where there's like 70 different events and so many things. So you're not wrong, but that's why we're working with municipalities right across the country to ensure that there's viewing opportunities, ensure that there are tickets for those available who may not otherwise be able to have them. But, you're not wrong. We want to make sure that everybody's aware that it's 13 matches in Canada. That's something to celebrate, but there's 104 matches, to take in and to watch. And now that there's a Team Canada to cheer for at the World Cup, what an incredible thing that is. I mean, when we hosted the Women's World Cup here, there was obviously an incredible women's team to cheer for, but now the men's side as well. It's very, very exciting. I've been cheering for Holland at the World Cup for the last 20 years, and now I get to cheer for Team Canada.
Good for you. The latest estimate from the province puts the government expenses so far at around $600 million. What financial support is the federal government providing for this?
Well, the federal government's invested $320 million between Toronto and British Columbia and Vancouver as well. Pardon me. And that's money well invested, I think, because this is going to provide a boost to our GDP in this country by approximately $2 billion. And over the last couple of years, we've seen already a huge rise as a result of the sports hosting efforts that we've put forward of around $4 billion in positive economic output. It's creating jobs, it's creating opportunity, it's improving the facilities that these athletes are going to go and compete in. So it's money well invested across the board. And one of the reasons I'm here is to talk to Vancouver and BC officials, as well as our host First Nations, to have those conversations about legacy, to make sure that those investments carry on into the future and pay off for people here in Vancouver, out in Toronto as well, but right across this country.
And what do we see as the legacy of these major sporting events? I mean, we can look around Vancouver and we can see that some of the practice facilities have been turned into public facilities, in Riley Park and Richmond, the Oval, a couple of other things. But in the long run, is it, when you do the financials, is it worth it for the city or the province overall? Or do we end up, still owing money at the end of it?
Well, I can speak from experience, just having been part of the Toronto Pan Am effort in 2015. We built a lot of new sports facilities throughout that effort, and Milton, in my constituency, got a velodrome out of it. So Kelsey Mitchell, who you heard about from Claude Fake just earlier, who was an Olympic champion and still continues to be an Olympic champion in cycling, is now going to the bobsled. So we can't think of legacy in terms of just something that you can touch. Like Kelsey Mitchell is an Olympic champion going to the Olympics in bobsled because Milton has that velodrome. So it's a kind of a knock-on effect of all the things that you get when you invest in sport. When you invest in sport, you get a healthier community. You get a happier community. You get people who are more connected, more vibrant. You get volunteers. You get kids excited. And honestly, there's really good studies to indicate that when you invest in sport, you also have safer communities too. Because when you give young people a thing to do and a choice between something nefarious or antisocial or a ball and a mentor, we know that they choose the ball and the mentor. So we're also providing more sporting opportunities with FIFA right across the country. We're celebrating that with Flag Day and with 4 important celebrations in June and July right during the tournament. Earlier, in the program, you mentioned the rise in women's sport, and just on the weekend, I was at the Toronto Scepters game. They played the Vancouver Golden Eyes, and then just 2 days ago, I was at the Ottawa Charge game where they played the Seattle Torrent, and with the Northern Super League. Congratulations to the Vancouver Rise. I'm a Toronto AFC fan, so that was really tough for me. But it's been a great year of sport, and it's gone really fast because I've had so many other sports to enjoy in the meantime.
Quinn signed my Quinn jersey, so I'm
amazing,
very, very happy.
amazing.
I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
Yesterday, the BC Rural Health Network sent an open letter to the Prime Minister, and the network was warning that people who need to travel to Vancouver for specialized health care are being priced out of accommodation that they may need because of, well, not just in the lead up to this, but overall, Vancouver simply doesn't have enough accommodation to hold everybody who wants to be here. What do we do about that? I know that's not directly the responsibility of the federal government, but as somebody whose job it is to look over our capacity, what do you think of that?
Well, that's a very important point, and actually ensuring that there is healthcare surge capacity was part of our transfer from the federal government to the provinces, and in this case, British Columbia right here, because when people come to Vancouver, there is going to be a rise in the need for healthcare services because with so many visiting, but we also recognize fully that Vancouver is a central hub for so many rural and farther away communities. So thank you for the flag. I will bring it up with officials today when I'm talking, but we are, we can celebrate full hotels in the summer. That's a great thing for our economy and for our local restaurants and small businesses, but we also have to consider what that does to people who will be relying on those for their own healthcare needs.
You've described Canada as, rightly so, as an excellent host nation. We do a good job of it every time. Is the United States an excellent host nation?
I've been to the United States for competition many, many times. I'll just say that I think Canada's the best, and I think that we have a lot to offer. And more we're seeing people want to choose Canada to come and watch FIFA games or just enjoy their summer. The Canada Strong Pass did a great thing to allow Canadians to stay at home in the summer and enjoy Canadian summer rather than travel for vacation. So I think we're going to see a lot of both. We're going to see people coming to Canada and people staying in Canada this summer. And that can only lead to good things for our global economy. And I was down in Mexico, and I think they're going to do an incredible job too. They'll do it differently, certainly. Their plans in Mexico City are incredible and just gigantic compared to what we do for sports in Canada.
Yeah.
But I do believe that Canada continues to be the best host nation in the world, and that 2026 is going to be Canada's year of sport.
I'm not trying to drag you into politics here, but it just seems that absolutely everything is political these days, including sport. In the World Cup, U.S. President Donald Trump, among his many threats, he said last year that he could stop Boston from hosting the games because he doesn't like, he's got a dispute with the mayor about how they handle public safety in the city of Boston. How do you deal with threats like that?
I chose politics. Last time I was at this desk, I was an athlete talking about my experiences as an athlete, and I chose politics, so I don't mind talking about politics. But what I saw yesterday at the first ministers meeting with Mark Carney and Doug Ford and Wab Kinew and David Eby and all of the others, Susan Holt, that we're all there together using a Team Canada narrative. They were talking about how important it is to be on the same page. We can disagree about things, but we ought to be on the same page with respect to the basics. And in Canada, we know that the basics are things cost too much right now. People deserve affordable housing. People want health care that is responsive to their needs. And we want to build a country that's safe and prosperous for our future and the future generations of this country. And we want to continue on that path collectively. And the same goes for our relationships with Mexico and the United States. There may be things that we disagree with or disagree on, but we must focus on our areas of commonality for our collective interests, because that is how we will win together.
The U.S. has said that it's going to be sending ICE agents to the Olympics in Italy next month. I know this is wildly speculative, but if the U.S. finishes third in its group and advances far enough, there's a chance that their team will play a round of 16 game here in Vancouver. How would Canada respond if they tried to send ICE agents up with their team?
I think it's a very unlikely possibility that the United States would play in Canada. I think they would do everything they could as an organization. We want Canada to play all of their games in Canada so they can have a great hometown advantage and fans. I'm as disappointed as most Canadians when I see what's happening in the United States. It's really, really troubling. And what that does is causes me to reflect on how grateful I am that both of my parents immigrated to Canada and found a safe place for me to grow up free of any fear of that kind of thing. So I'm very confident that with Prime Minister Mark Carney and our new government, we'll be able to keep Canadians safe, and we don't have to worry about any of those crazy things happening in Canada.
Are we actually free of fear here when we keep hearing the kind of rhetoric coming out of the United States that's coming out of the U.S., and when we hear about, Albertan separatists, for lack of a better word, going to the United States trying to solicit support for a separated Alberta?
No, I focus on the positive that I've seen lately, which is that Canada is more unified than we've ever been, and that collectively we have confidence in our Prime Minister and confidence in our leaders. And I'm feeling good about where we're going as a country. And I know that sports provides us that opportunity to come together, forget about politics, forget about who you voted for maybe, and just focus on cheering for the team. I'm not trying to avoid the question, but truly I do think sports and physical activity and recreation, it also causes us to sort of have, there's a dopamine response. There's a reason that I got up this morning and jogged 5 kilometers before I came into your program, because I wanted to feel good. I wanted to be productive today. And, I think some of the leaders around the world that are demonstrating a little bit of whatever it might be, like anxiety, maybe they need to go for a jog and relax a little bit and realize that the world's pretty good and we can collectively work on our goals together and prosper as a unit.
Just one last thing, which is the mayor of Vancouver likes to describe our hosting of 7 World Cup games as multiple Super Bowls. I can't remember what his number is, 5, 6, a dozen Super Bowls or something like that. How do you describe it?
I describe it as the Men's World Cup. It's the biggest sports event next year. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's coming very, very quickly. Like you said, just 4 months
Yeah.
away. I think it'll come and go really quickly, even when it's here. It'll be an incredible celebration right across our country. A celebration not just of soccer, but of sport, of national unity, of multiculturalism, of our relationships as a country. But it's also going to invite all of these great, like, sort of potentially novel corporate partners and other countries to Canada to meet us and to potentially do business going forward. So I think it's just a great opportunity. It's the biggest event next year, and it's all part of Canada's Year of Sport 2026.